The late afternoon sun slanted across the tiled floor of Manny Pacquiao's home in General Santos City, casting a golden hue on everything it touched. The house was quiet, unusually so. No handlers, no assistants, no press. Just Manny in a white cotton shirt, tending to his modest garden in the back. He moved with the rhythm of someone unburdened, watering the orchids his wife had planted years ago. Every so often, he glanced up at the sky, half praying, half remembering. The peace was rare and it was real. Inside, the house was filled with symbols of a life that had been lived in extremes: championship belts on polished shelves, framed newspaper clippings, letters from presidents. But they felt like artifacts from another lifetime. Today, Manny was just a brother, a father, a son, a man enjoying the quiet. Then came the vibration, a faint hum on the marble counter. He walked in slowly, wiping his hands on a towel, and reached for the phone. The name on the screen made him pause. Manny Pacquiao. He hadn't spoken to his sister in over a month. Not because they were distant, not emotionally at least, but because life had gotten in the way. Campaigns, endorsements, travel, interviews, and time, ever slippery, had continued to slide past. He smiled instinctively and swiped to answer. "Maria," he said, his voice lifting with warmth. "Hey, how are you?" But he didn't finish, because there was no reply, only the sound of someone breathing. Ragged, halting, fragile. He waited. "Maria," he tried again, softer now. The sound that followed was not a word but a broken sob, like something cracked open on the other end of the line. His sister was crying, not politely, not discreetly, but raw, full-body crying. The kind you can't control, the kind that shakes the phone as much as the soul. Hey, what's wrong?" he said quickly, instinctively sitting down at the edge of the dining table. "Where are you? Are you okay?" She tried to speak. The first attempt was lost in another sob. Then, after several seconds of gasping breath, "Kuya, I'm sorry." He straightened. That word, Kuya, used only by his siblings, only when they needed him most, felt like a switch in his chest. "Don't be sorry," he said, calming his voice. "Tell me, what's going on?" There was a long silence. Then, little by little, words began to form between the tears. Her voice was cracked, almost childlike in its vulnerability. She told him about her son, his nephew, how the boy had changed, how she found meth in his backpack, how the confrontations had turned violent. There was yelling in the house now, doors slammed, holes in the walls. He wasn't the same boy who used to run barefoot through the sugarcane fields. Then she talked about money, quietly, shamefully, about how she'd taken out loans to help with tuition and food, thinking she could handle it on her own. But now the interest was out of control. Debt collectors calling, threats, disgrace. And finally, almost as a whisper, their mother. How her diabetes had worsened, how she'd fallen last week and hadn't told anyone, how she cried at night, thinking her children were too busy to care. "I didn't want to tell you," Maria said, her voice cracking. "I didn't want to be a burden." Manny felt the breath leave his chest. For a moment he couldn't speak. He remembered their mother wrapping fish in newspaper, selling it in the streets. He remembered Maria standing on a plastic stool to reach the pot, helping stir rice when they were too poor to afford firewood. They had fought for everything, and now she felt ashamed to need help. He stood up, pacing the floor. "You're not a burden," he said firmly. "You're my sister. You should have told me." "I didn't want to disappoint you." Her words hit harder than any punch he'd taken in the ring. The idea that she, his blood, his history, his mirror, had felt the need to hide her pain from him was unbearable. "I'm not some stranger," he said, a tremor in his voice. "I'm your Kuya. I fought for titles, for countries, but I'd give up all of it just to make sure you're okay. Don't ever think you can't call me." There was silence again, but this time it was different, softer, quieter, as if something had been released. "I just didn't know who else to call," she said finally, her voice smaller than he'd ever heard it. He sat back down, gripping the phone tighter. "Then you called the right person." He could hear her breathing evening out. But the tears were still there, just quieter now, less chaotic. The storm had lessened but not passed. "I feel like everything's breaking," she said. "Like I failed as a mother, as a daughter." "You didn't fail," he interrupted. "You've been carrying too much alone." They both sat in silence again, but it was a shared silence now. He stared out the window. The light had changed. Shadows stretched long across the garden. A wind rustled the leaves. "I've been gone too much," he said. "Not just from places, but from you. I thought helping meant sending money. I thought I was protecting you by not bothering you with my mess. It's not your fault, but it is my family," he said. And just like that, something shifted between them. The distance, the pride, the silence, it cracked open. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't Manny the legend and Maria the forgotten sister. They were just two kids from Bukidnon, trying to hold on to something real. He stood up. "Where are you right now?" he asked. "At home," she said. "I'm coming." She gasped. "You don't have to." "I want to. I'll be there tonight. I'll drive myself." More tears. But this time they came with a trembling laugh. "You're still stubborn." "So are you." They both smiled. He could feel it, even through the phone. "Thank you, Kuya," she said. "You never have to thank me for being your brother." The call ended not with goodbye, but with a silence that spoke more than words. Manny stared at the phone for a moment longer, then placed it gently on the table. Outside, the orchids swayed in the breeze, unaware that a different kind of fight was about to begin. Not with fists or fans, but with heart, with presence, with forgiveness. And for the first time in years, Manny Pacquiao felt like a fighter again, not for a title, but for family. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of memory, winding through the thick dusk of the southern Philippines. Manny's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind moved faster than the car. He didn't bring security. No aides, no press. Just a duffel bag, his phone, and the steady ache in his chest that pulsed heavier with every mile. He hadn't made a drive like this in years, maybe decades. Not since the days before titles, before Congress, before the world turned his name into a brand. He remembered these roads. He remembered the trees that seemed to lean in like old friends. Somewhere in the shadows of the night were old houses, old stories, old versions of himself. The boy who fought for food. The teenager who slept in the boxing gym with gloves under his head like a pillow. The brother who once promised to never let his family suffer again. And yet, Maria had suffered. Quietly. Alone. The thought dug into him like a thorn. When he finally arrived, the house was smaller than he remembered. Or maybe he had just grown used to space, to marble floors and chandeliers. But here, the air smelled of laundry soap and wood, of old prayers whispered in the corners. Maria was sitting on the concrete steps outside, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes rimmed red. When she saw him, she stood abruptly, brushing her hands down her skirt like a reflex, an instinct to straighten herself for him, like she always did when they were younger. But Manny didn't give her time for that. He stepped forward and wrapped her in a hug so tight, so immediate, that it broke something open in both of them. She didn't cry right away. She just stood there in his arms, small and stiff. Then, as if his presence made it safe to do so, she began to shake. Quiet, convulsive sobs into his shoulder. He held her like a shield. "I told you I'd come," he whispered. They stayed outside for several minutes, until the weight of everything loosened enough to let them walk inside. The house was dimly lit. There were signs of hard times everywhere. The peeling paint, the cracked tiles, the aging photos on the wall that hadn't been replaced in years. In the corner, their mother slept on a rattan couch, her chest rising and falling in slow, labored breaths. Maria gestured for him to sit at the small table, and without asking, she poured him a cup of lukewarm coffee. They sat in silence for a moment, the clink of the spoon in the mug the only sound between them. Manny looked at her, not just her face, but the exhaustion etched into it. The sleepless nights, the silent sacrifices, the fading glow of a woman who once sang while she cooked, who once believed the world was softening because her brother had made it. "You didn't tell me how bad it was," he said finally. She didn't look at him. I couldn't. Why not? Because you left, she said softly, then louder. Because you're not here anymore, Manny. You left us a long time ago. The words came fast, sharper than either of them expected. Manny blinked. I send money every month. I'm not talking about money, she said, her voice breaking. I'm talking about you, the man who used to come home without cameras, the brother who listened, who laughed, who fought for us before the world watched. He leaned back, stunned by the weight of her truth. You became someone else, she continued, eyes glistening. And I was proud. I am proud. But it's like you were only reachable by appointment. Your life got bigger and we got smaller. You're everyone's hero, but sometimes it felt like we lost our brother. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had lifted belts, signed autographs, built churches. He had tried to be so much for so many. Had he really failed the ones who mattered most? I didn't mean to disappear, he said finally. She nodded slowly, her voice quieter now. I know. That's what makes it harder. You didn't leave in anger. You left with good intentions, but good intentions don't tuck kids into bed. They don't fix broken doors or sit beside a mother at the hospital. Her words landed heavy, but they didn't come from bitterness. They came from longing. I kept thinking, she went on, if I could just hold it all together, you wouldn't need to worry. That I could carry this weight quietly, be strong like you. Manny reached across the table and took her hand. You are strong, he said. You're the strongest one of us. She shook her head. Not anymore. And then the tears returned. Slower this time, but deeper. The kind that come when someone finally stops holding everything in. He let her cry. He didn't try to fix it, didn't interrupt. He just held her hand and listened. I miss the old days, she said between sobs, when we had nothing, but we had each other. So do I. The admission caught them both off guard. But it was true. I miss sleeping on the floor, he said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Miss fighting over leftover fish, miss Mama's stories, miss you. Maria looked up. You were my best friend, Kuya. You knew everything about me. Then you became famous, and I didn't want to be another person asking you for something. Manny exhaled, the words slicing through him. I didn't want you to need to ask. I thought I was protecting you by staying away. I didn't want my life, the noise, the pressure, the politics to touch you. But it touched us anyway, she whispered. We just couldn't reach you to tell you how. They sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was reflective. Manny finally spoke, his voice quiet but certain. From now on, I won't let distance be an excuse. If I'm not here with you, I'm not anywhere that matters. She looked at him, startled. You can't just walk away from everything. I'm not walking away, he said. I'm choosing where to walk toward. The door to the back room creaked, and their mother stirred. Maria stood to check on her, but Manny motioned for her to sit. I'll go. He walked to the bedroom, knelt beside the old woman's bed, and gently took her hand. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she looked confused. Then she smiled. My boy, she murmured. He kissed her forehead. I'm home, Ma. Back at the table, Maria wiped her face. Her brother returned a few minutes later and sat down beside her. I'll talk to your son, he said. I'll help him. Not with lectures, but with time. I'll bring people in. Real counselors, real help. We'll figure out the money, the debt, the doctors, all of it. She stared at him. Why now? She asked. He didn't hesitate. Because I realized today that titles don't mean anything if I lose the people I won them for. She leaned her head on his shoulder, just like she used to when they were children and afraid of the dark. And in that quiet house, where memories lingered like ghosts, two siblings sat side by side, tired, honest, and together. For the first time in years, they weren't pretending, they were healing. The sky was still dark when Manny woke up the next morning. The sounds of the countryside whispering through the open windows, crickets fading, roosters starting, the slow exhale of the earth just before sunrise. He sat up on the modest cot Maria had made for him in the corner of the living room, his back slightly aching from the thin mattress, but his chest somehow lighter than it had been in months, maybe years. For once, there were no alarms, no press briefings, no flights to catch. Just a quiet house and the steady breath of family sleeping under the same roof. He stood and stretched, walked barefoot into the kitchen, and brewed a pot of strong Baracco coffee the way their mother liked it, bold, earthy, no sugar. As it brewed, the scent filled the house like a signal of home, and slowly, one by one, the house stirred awake. Maria was first. She entered with her hair pulled back in a loose bun, eyes still swollen but more at peace. She gave him a tired smile and reached for a mug without a word. They sat together at the wooden table again, as if no time had passed since they were kids waiting for the rice to finish cooking. Their mother joined them a little later, shuffling in with careful steps, wrapped in a shawl too thin for her age. Manny stood immediately and helped her sit, placing a hand on her shoulder, gentle and reverent. The silence between the three of them was comfortable now, like an old blanket that no longer needed patching. But one chair at the table remained empty, the one that mattered most to this chapter of the story. Maria's son, Jasper, 17 years old, too smart for his own good, too angry for his own safety, and now lost in a tangle of choices no one had prepared him for. Manny didn't wait for him to appear. After breakfast, he asked Maria for the boy's location. She hesitated. She said he'd stormed out the night before when he saw his uncle's car parked in front. Said he didn't want a sermon, didn't want charity, didn't want some global icon showing up pretending to understand. Manny listened without judgment. Then he put on a hoodie and left the house on foot. He walked the old dirt paths of the neighborhood with his head down. No entourage, no photographers, just Manny, retracing the alleys he used to run through as a boy in worn-out slippers. People noticed, of course, eyes widened, heads turned, but no one stopped him. They sensed something was different today, that this wasn't a celebrity walk. This was a man on a mission, one that didn't involve cameras or glory. He found Jasper near the basketball court behind the barangay hall. The boy was sitting on a low wall, headphones in, hoodie up, trying to disappear. Manny stood a few feet away and waited. Eventually, Jasper noticed, pulled one earbud out and gave him a long defensive stare. "You're really here," he said, more accusation than observation. "I am," Manny replied calmly. "What do you want?" "To talk. Not as senator, not as champ, just as your uncle." Jasper scoffed. "You don't know me." "Maybe not. But I know what it feels like to be angry. To be lost. I've lived there." The boy didn't respond. Manny took a breath. Sat on the edge of the wall a few feet away. "I used to sleep on the floor of a boxing gym because I didn't have money for rice," he said. "I know what it's like to feel like the world only notices you when you win. I know what it's like to want to hit something just to feel heard." Jasper's eyes flickered, a chink in the armor. "I messed up," the boy muttered. Manny nodded. "Maybe, but you're not the mistake. You're still breathing. That means you can still choose." The wind blew through the trees above them, carrying the scent of car exhaust and grilled fish from a nearby vendor. The city was waking up around them, but in that moment, time seemed to pause. "I don't want your money," Jasper said finally. "I didn't bring any," Manny said. The boy blinked, caught off guard. "I came to bring myself, to listen, to understand, and if you'll let me, to help." Jasper looked away, his jaw tight. "My dad left. I thought you did too." "I never left," Manny said. "But I wasn't present either. That's going to change." Something in Jasper's shoulders softened. They didn't hug, they didn't cry. But when they walked back to the house side by side, it was enough. A beginning. The rest of the day moved with a kind of quiet purpose. Manny stayed, sat with his mother through her insulin injections, took calls from his team only to cancel appearances. He told them he was unavailable until further notice. No, he didn't need them to come to Gen-san. No press statements. This wasn't a campaign, this was real life. In the afternoon, he brought in a doctor he trusted to assess his mother's health. Later, he made calls to local rehab centers, not for headlines, but for results. He used his name not to shine, but to open doors. For once, it wasn't about being Manny Pacquiao the symbol. It was about being Manny the man, the brother, the uncle who still had time to make things right. That night, as the family sat around a small dinner of grilled fish, boiled vegetables, and rice, there was a new kind of energy in the room. It wasn't joy exactly. Joy takes time to build, but it was peace and presence. Maria watched her son eat slowly, not on his phone, not hostile. Manny cracked a joke and the boy smiled. Just barely. But it was enough. After dinner, as dishes were cleared and the sun dipped behind the hills, Maria stepped outside onto the front steps and lit a small candle. Manny followed, carrying 2 cups of salabat, the ginger tea their mother used to make when they were sick. They sat together, shoulder to shoulder, watching the candle flicker. "Do you remember when we used to dream about living in a house with a toilet that flushed?" Maria said, laughing softly. Manny chuckled. "And we thought a fan in the living room was luxury." It was. They sat in silence for a moment, memories dancing between them like shadows in the candlelight. "You saved us once," Maria said. "With your fists, your fire. The world fell in love with you because you fought like someone who had nothing to lose." "I had everything to lose," Manny replied. "You, Mama, our story." She looked at him, eyes damp again. "I almost didn't call you yesterday. I thought maybe the Manny we grew up with was gone." He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, he placed his hand over hers. "I'm still here. Just took me a while to come home." Her tears fell quietly this time, not from pain, but from release. "Thank you, Kuya," she whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me that we're never too far to find each other again." He nodded, unable to speak, a lump rising in his throat too thick to swallow. Inside the house, their mother had fallen asleep to the sound of old gospel songs. Jasper had curled up on the couch with a blanket. The house, battered as it was, now pulsed with something stronger than walls or wiring. Connection, love, forgiveness. As the candle burned lower, Manny looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to peek through the clouds. He didn't know what tomorrow held, whether headlines would distort this moment, whether politics or boxing or obligations would knock again. But for now, he was where he needed to be. Not on a podium, not in a ring, but here, on the steps of a home that had waited far too long for its champion to return, not as a fighter, but as a brother. And as the night settled in, soft and sacred, Manny Pacquiao closed his eyes and smiled.